Hello, WWE Universe, and welcome to the first of my two new reviews for this week, which is going to be for to do a catch up on WWE Hell in the Cell for 2018, as we take a look and see what went down during this year's Hell in the Cell. And then my next episode, we'll talk about the all women's pay per view, the very first women's only pay per view in WWE Evolution that went out last night. So, let's go through all the matches of Hell in the Cell, shall we? So we start things off with the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match where the New Day would challenge Rusev Day of Rusev and Aiden English when they were obviously friends, but obviously that didn't go well because eventually the New Day would remain the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. But of course, shortly after this pay-per-view match, we would see the split up of Rusev Day as Aiden English turned his back on Rusev. But then the next match, of course, would be the first Hell in the Cell match for the pay-per-view, which will be Randy Orton versus Jeff Hardy, both men inside Hell in the Cell. But, of course, with Randy Orton's history inside Hell in the Cell, he was able to destroy Jeff Hardy inside the cell, becoming victorious in the Hell in the Cell match. And then eventually we would lead ourselves to the next match, which would be for the SmackDown Women's Championship, where Charlotte Flair was the champion at the time, taking on Becky Lynch. And it was, of course, the result which would lead to Becky Lynch beating Charlotte Flair to win, to become a two-time SmackDown Women's Champion and the current SmackDown Women's Champion right now in the rivalry between Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. Definitely something to call for, of course. And then eventually this would then lead to the Raw Tag Team Championship match where Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre would take on Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. And of course, however, though, it would lead to the battle. Well, it would lead to, of course, Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre successfully retaining the Raw Tag titles against Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. And then eventually we would lead ourselves to the WWE Championship match where AJ Styles takes on Samoa Joe in a one-on-one match for the WWE Championship. And AJ Styles defeats Samoa Joe and remains the WWE Champion. Definitely AJ Styles was lucky then to remain champ. Then we would have the battle between The Miz and Maurice versus Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella, as Brie Bella teams up with Daniel Bryan during the event. But however, though, they were unsuccessful to pull off against The Miz and Maurice, as they would come out victorious in the mixed tag match during Hell in the Cell's pay-per-view. So unlucky for Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella's partnership, and the match didn't work, didn't pay them off, obviously. But then we would then lead ourselves to the rematch from SummerSlam where Ronda Rousey would take on Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's Championship. But of course, it was because of this match, of course, Ronda Rousey was able to defeat Alexa Bliss and remain Raw's Women's Champion, remaining the leader of the Raw's Women's division, as Ronda Rousey continues to dominate as Raw's Women's Champ. And then finally, we had the main event, which would be Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman for the Universal title inside Hell in the Cell. But of course, that didn't go too well because Brock Lesnar shows up and F5s everybody in determined to get back his Universal Championship that Roman Reigns won off Brock Lesnar during SummerSlam this year. So, in other words, it didn't go as Roman Reigns planned it, but at least they did their best to do what was necessary to be pretty good, essentially. But regardless, though, it was definitely a battle. But yeah, that was essentially Hell in the Cell 2018. Pretty solid pay-per-view. The fact that we have Becky Lynch reclaiming the SmackDown Women's Championship from Charlotte Flair, beginning the rivalry between Becky Lynch and Charlotte. And, of course, the fact that Brock Lesnar shows up, which was to promote the Crown Jewels event, which is going to be happening, I believe, in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see between Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman who will become Universal Champion, because shortly after this pay-per-view, Roman Reigns would receive leukemia again, and obviously that leads to Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar facing off for the vacated Universal Championship. So one of these men are going to become Universal Champion during the Crown Jewels event, which is happening in about a week or so. So we'll find out for sure if Braun Strowman can finally realize his dream of becoming the top on the Raw roster. So, yeah, that is essentially Hell in a Cell, and I hope you guys, enjoyed this review, and I'll see you guys in the upcoming review for the first ever women's only WWE event, WWE Evolution, and see what went down on the very first women's only pay-per-view in WWE history. So, see you then.